Welcome to another edition of Sparky Help. This time we're looking at electrical generation and more specifically E equals BLV. What do we need for generation? Well, a magnet would be a good starting point, and so it's just as simple as that. We need a magnet and a coil. And it was nearly 200 years ago that Michael Faraday who discovered that you can induce a current into a copper wire by moving magnets. So we get the magnet. And in the magnet, what do we need to know about that? Well, there's a magnet, and obviously what you've all probably played about with before, if you've ever put iron filings on a piece of paper on top of a magnet, you get flux lines. And the flux lines, which are measured in Webers, emanate from the north and go to the south. And this is the magnetic field. We can generally show, if we draw more flux lines, that generally shows it's a stronger magnet than something with fewer flux lines. But what is it we're really interested in the magnet, and what separates one magnet from another and what's good for electrical generation? It's something called the flux density. Flux density, which is the B, is measured in Tesla or Webers per meter squared. Now I like the Webers per meter squared unit because that's exactly what the formula is to calculate B. It's not that we're covering that one here, but it's the Webers divided by the area that the surface of the magnetic field lines are coming out of. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a magnet, and graphically we can see lots of flux lines coming out of the north and going into the south. Here's another magnet, same size magnet in that sense, but it has fewer flux lines. Compare that to the Earth. The Earth is huge and has many more flux lines coming out of it. Obviously, that's only a generalization. What makes one magnet better than the other? Well, it's the amount of flux lines in a given area. If you went off to the North Pole, you wouldn't find a load of keys all stuck to it or metal stuck to it because the flux lines are over such a vast area. If we would condense the Earth down to the size of a tennis ball, you would have an unbelievably strong magnet. And that's what we're after. So we're after this one here. What else do we need? Well, we mentioned a coil. And a coil consists of insulated copper wire. Why insulated? Well, you don't want them shorting out. And you're looking for as many turns on the coil as you can possibly get. And coil it up. So you have two ends come out, and hence we have the symbol we use for our electrical drawings. And it's about the length of this conductor that we're after. So the more length you can get into the conductor, the better it will be. So here's a generalization, just a representation. There's our coil with so many turns around it. Here's another coil with twice as many turns about it. So it would make sense that the one on the right hand side would be the better coil, but it's not quite as simple as that, because here's our magnet, which is going to have an impact on it, and the magnetic flux lines cover all the turns of the coil. Put the same magnet against the other coil, which has twice as many turns. However, only the same amount of turns as the previous coil get influenced by the magnetic field. So the turns that you have need to be influenced by the magnetic field. There's no point having all these spare coils out in the middle of nowhere doing nothing. So if we had to use the one on the right, we'd want to double wind the windings in one location where it's going to be influenced. So hence the one on the left is better and more productive. The other bit that we need to be concerned with is the velocity. So one of these things have to move. So you can either move the coil or you can move the magnet. If you move the coil, you've got connections to worry about. They will spin and twist. So you'd have to put slip rings on. That would make things more complex. So what it can be easier is if you just turn the magnet. So as you turn the magnet, we've got a graph here that will show what it will actually plot, and we'll rotate it one full revolution 360 degrees and watch what happens. As it starts to rotate, as the north comes up to the coil, we get to a peak voltage. As it drops away, the flux lines dissipate away from it to get to 180 to 0. The south then returns up to a full maximum again until you get back to where you started, and it goes back to 0, and the whole thing repeats itself. How does this affect velocity? Well, it's a simple fact that the faster it spins, the bigger the voltage will be induced. Let's have a look at that then. So let's have the coil again. Let's bring our magnet back in and we will rotate it. And you can see in that one revolution, it creates a sine wave. Let's have a look and let's spin the magnet twice as fast as it was before. And we can see that in the same amount of time, it rotates twice, but actually because it rotated faster, the EMF, the voltage, is higher. Why is any of this important? Well, A, you want maximum voltage, but we want the next bit we need to be interested in because this is vital for all of our supplies. So let's have a look at this again. Let's rotate it and we create a sine wave as it rotates. But the bit we're interested in is this period here. It's called T, the period of time in seconds. It's the time it takes to make one complete sine wave. Why are we interested in this? Well, we have a formula. The formula will calculate the frequency, and frequency is 1 over T. So if the time it takes for one cycle is 20 milliseconds, that becomes 1 divided by 0.02, and that gives us a 50 hertz supply. And our frequency must be maintained by plus or minus 1%, so that's half a hertz either way. There is only so fast you can get the magnet to rotate, and before it is fixed. So the other bits you have to play about with to increase your voltage is the flux density and the number of turns on the coil. Let's have a look then by increasing the flux density. So here's our magnet just to demonstrate what we mean by that. It rotates and it creates a sine wave. Let's replace that magnet which has a low flux density to one that has a higher flux density, and let's rotate it exactly the same. And this time you can see the EMF you produce is much higher. It's the flux density that hopefully can increase it. If this is a permanent magnet, then the manufacturers will set it. If the middle bit is an electromagnet, it can be varied for your output, but the frequency we'll want to maintain at the steady speed. Let's have a look at three-phase then, because that's obviously single. Obviously there's a lot of wasted space all around, so let's put a couple of extra set of coils in, and you've got L1, L2 and L3, and as you get one full rotation on each of the coils in turn, they are induced at different points in time. So you have identical sine waves, they're just out of phase of each other by a displacement of 120 degrees, and there is our three-phase sine wave. The formula then, E equals BLV, E equals BLV, or as Mr. P tells me, electricians bloody love volts. Thank you for that. What do all of these things mean? Where E is the electromotive force, EMF, and that's a simple measurement of volts. B is the flux density, which is measured in Tesla or Webers per meter squared. They're the units that are used. L is the length of the conductor influenced by the magnetic field, and that is a measurement in meters. So we need to make sure the units are all correct, so the length must be in meters. And the velocity is measured in meters per second. So if we know any of these things, we can calculate the voltage. And that all can fit into a triangle, like so. E at the top, B, L, V at the bottom, cover any of them up, and that's basically, we can rearrange that formula nice and simple. So let's look at a question. A conductor with a length of 0.45 meters moves at right angles. Why right angles? Because that's the maximum induced EMF. If you go back and look, when it was at 90 degrees, that's when the peak sine wave occurs. Magnetic strength of 1.1 Tesla at a speed of 5 meters per second. Calculate the induced voltage. So we need to know E equals BLV. Electricians bloody love volts. There's our formula, just to reiterate that it can fit into a triangle, and we can put our figures in. E equals 1.1 times 0.45 times 5. Calculate that, and it comes at 2.475 volts. How simple is that? Let's look at another question. A conductor with a length of 800 millimeter passes through a magnetic field with a strength of 2.8 Tesla at a speed of 25 meters per second. Another favourite from awarding bodies to give you a question like this and see what answer you come up with. What you've got to make sure you do here is A, remember the formula, E equals BLV, remember that fits in the triangle, But the important thing here is the 800 millimeters. These units need to be meters, so it needs to be converted to meters. So if we put those figures in, that's 2.8 times 0.8 of a meter times 25. Put those into your calculator and what you'll get is 56 volts. Let's look at one more question. Before we finish off, a conductor with a length of 0.95 meters passes through a magnetic field at a speed of 18 meters per second. The EMF induced is 21.5 volts. Calculate the flux density. So let's remind ourselves of the formula. E equals BLV. Remember, this fits into the triangle, so the bit we're after here is B, the flux density. So that becomes E divided by L times V. So let's put that formula out, put it into brackets at the bottom, put our figures in, so that's 21.5 divided by the multiplication of 0.95 times 18, and that gives us a flux density of 1.26 Tesla or 1.26 Webers per meter square. Either of those would be acceptable. So I hope this has helped explain E equals BLV, E equals BLV. Hope it's useful for you. Thank you very much.